Alaric, Kryptina, Lydia, and Klaus all rushed back into the castle. Kryptina noticed the castle had many holes and some of the areas stunk of garlic. There was so much damage, they need to find another place to stay, she thought to herself. They all noticed Thorn lying there next to their mother. Tears fell from Thorn's eyes, and a silver cup laid next to her. I really tried, but I'm just not strong enough. Let me help. Alaric sat down next to her. Let me help you too. Kryptina stepped in. Like I promised. She touched noses with Alaric. There's more of us now. She sat down next to him. Her cheeks turned red. Just show me how. This is how you do it. Alaric lifted his arm towards himself, and he slowly bit his wrist, causing himself to bleed a bit. He picked up the silver cup and poured his blood into the glass. He passed the cup to her. Here. Kryptina took the glass from him. Then she lifted her arm and slowly bit her wrist, and she poured her blood into the glass. She passed it to Duke. Duke followed behind her, lifting up his arm and biting from his wrist. He then poured his blood into the glass. He passed it to Henderson as Orthos watched, crouching in the back. The wolf's ears laid back and his fur puffed up in the air as he watched all the vampires passing the glass to one another. Klaus poured his blood into the glass, and he turned to his beloved Lydia. He handed her the glass and nodded his head. Lydia takes it and lifted her other arm and bit her wrist and poured her blood into the glass. Just then it began to storm as all the vampires finished pouring their blood into the glass. Rain fell from the sky as the humans stepped towards the large gate. Harold was in the lead. He and the humans lifted the gate up. Whoa! Harold looked out at the forest. The forest had many vampire hunters exiting it. We got them! We killed them! No worries! All the vampires have been slayed! The vampire hunters cried with joy. Take a look at that, Harold said. Whoa! All the humans said with shock. So much damage, one of the humans said. It's all because of Van Helsing that we're saved, Maddie shouted. He must have wiped out the whole population of them. Poor Kryptina. Harold looked down at the ground with sadness. If only he didn't tease Kryptina long ago about being bitten by a vampire, maybe she would still be here. We're free! We're free! Maddie quickly jumped up with joy while Anastasia looked down at the fabric piece left of Kryptina's former costume. Kryptina, I should have stopped you from going into Shadow Forest when I had the chance. Anastasia remembered when she first met Kryptina. She was always so free-spirited and curious. If only she would have stopped her from going into Shadow Forest, maybe she would have still been here with her. Anastasia rested the white, soft fabric piece on her head. It was wetted with tears. Thorn slowly lifted her mother's head as Alaric slowly poured the blood into his mother's mouth. All the vampires waited eagerly for Thorn and Alaric's mother to awaken. Just then, Alaric and Thorn's mother's head popped up with shock. All the vampires felt thrilled to see her undead again. Lydia looked at all the vampires and smiled. She was so happy to see how everyone was so happy, and she remembered all the good times she had with her parents before they passed. Then suddenly her smiles turned upside down as she remembered that she had kept a terrible secret this whole time. How can someone as scary and as cold as she is belong with vampires who were good? She was always loyal to Van Helsing and supported him this whole time. How could she even bear to face another night with the boy who she broke his heart? Lydia turned away and she began to slowly exit the broken-down castle. Lydia kept on walking away, trying to rub the tears from her face until she heard someone call to her. Don't leave. You're one of us now. Lydia turned to see it is her beloved Klaus standing in front of her. I even noticed you are wearing the gift I got for you, Klaus said with a smile and reached out his hand to her. Lydia looked down at her hands, seeing she was still wearing the purple ring on her finger. The ring had a purple gem, and it is surrounded with gold. But Klaus, what if... Lydia was cut off by Klaus as he leaned in and pressed his lips up against hers. Oh, Klaus! Lydia looks away as her cheeks began to turn red. As the third quarter moon rose in the night sky, Chester handed a bag over to Kryptina. Are you sure about this, Kryptina? Will this make you happy? He rested his hand on her shoulder. Of course, and may you please watch over my two friends, Harold and Anastasia, especially Harold. You know how sensitive he can be. Kryptina asked, taking the bag from Chester. Of course, Chester said. Kryptina turned towards her lynx, and she suddenly noticed Snowy was staring at a gray male lynx who was looking at her. The gray male lynx meowed. Snowy turned to Kryptina with her ears lowering and her eyes with sadness. It will be fine, Kryptina said, kneeling down, and she hugged her. Go on now. Snowy smiled and purred, licking Kryptina. Then Snowy ran off, following the gray male lynx into the forest. Kryptina turns to Chester. I love you, Chester. Kryptina wrapped her arms around him. I love you too, Chester replied, wrapping his arms around her too. Kryptina let go of him. Take care. You too, Chester waved farewell to her. Kryptina ran deep into the forest and transformed into a bat, flying up to Alaric and his friends, who were also in bat form. Are you all ready to go now? Oxblood asked. We're ready. They all flew down and transformed back into their cells, all the vampires said. All the vampires and Orthos got into the carriage. Race you! Alaric cried, transforming into a bat, and he began to fly faster. Not if I race you first! Kryptina followed, transforming into a bat, and flew right beside him. They giggled at one another until they both heard something rattling in the bushes. Hey, did you hear that? Kryptina asked. Yes. They looked down below them to see a long reptile shape from below them. Hey, it's my Komodo dragon Pokey! Alaric smiled with joy. I used to take care of him for a long time until I set him free. Pokey? Kryptina looked at him with a smirk. And look! Kryptina pointed at a mortal human man sitting down on the tree trunk. The man looked like he was in his 40s. He had blonde hair and he wore a long green robe. Just then, Kryptina licked her fangs and she quickly flew down, hissing with delight as Alaric flew with her, hissing with delight too. They were just about to reach and bite him, but before they could get the chance to, they heard Oxblood's voice. Don't you dare! Oh no! Alaric and Kryptina both looked at each other and flew back up into the sky. An audience of vampires waited, sitting on their seats, as Klaus and Lydia both entered the stage holding hands. The two smiled at each other with their eyes sparkling like diamonds in the sky. Klaus sat down facing his piano while Lydia sat down facing her harp. The two began to play their instruments as the audience of vampires watched them play as their hair began to turn white. Oxblood, Thorn, Alaric, Kryptina, Orthos, Duke, Henderson, Alaric, and Thorn's mother all headed towards the castle. Oxblood knocked on the castle door, patiently waiting for a response. Then all of a sudden the castle door opened and they all looked to see a woman vampire and a boy vampire inside the castle. The woman vampire is dressed in a long black gown. She had dark brown hair and golden eyes. The boy vampire is wearing a red pirate hat with golden lines on it and a long red robe with golden lines on it. Can I help you? The woman vampire asked. Oxblood stepped forward. I am Oxblood, and this is my class and their parents. We are the school from next door of this country. Oxblood lowered his hat. I will like to ask of you if we may move in permanently. 6 months later, Abraham Van Helsing continued chasing the small black cat as she is meowing and running at the same time until all of a sudden they both ran across the road. The cat quickly ran through the bushes as Abraham Van Helsing is almost across the road until he heard a beeping sound. Abraham Van Helsing looked up and he felt frozen and his eyes widened with shock when he saw a car coming towards him. It continued beeping as he froze there until, with a big slam, everything went black with nothing more seen but golden stars flying out of nowhere.